All right, good morning, guys. Okay, we're gonna finish the first part of this book today. So we're gonna finish the first half. If you're following the chart still, it said that I was gonna stop after page 29 or chapter 29, but I'm actually gonna stop after 28 today, because it's the end of this section. So just so you know. Okay, here we go. Chapter 27, page 116. Stanley dug his shovel into the ground, and his hole was about 3.5 feet deep in the center. He grunted as he pried up some dirt and then flung it off to the side. The sun was almost directly overhead. He glanced at his canteen lying beside his hole, and he knew it was half full, but he didn't take a drink just yet. He had to drink sparingly because he didn't know who would be driving the water truck the next time it came. 3 days had passed since the warden had scratched Mr. Sir, and every time Mr. Sir delivered water, he poured Stanley straight onto the ground. Fortunately, Mr. Pendanski delivered the water more often than Mr. Sir, and Mr. Pendanski was obviously aware of Mr. Sir was doing, because he always gave Stanley a little extra. He'd fill Stanley's canteen, then let Stanley take a long drink, then top it off for him. It helped, too, that Zero was digging some of Stanley's holes for him. Although, as Stanley had expected, the other boys didn't like to see Stanley sitting around while they were working. They'd say things like, "Who died and made you king?" Or, "It must be nice to have your own personal slave." When he tried pointing out that he was the only one who took the blame for the sunflower seeds, the other boys said it was his fault because he was the only one who spilled them. "I risked my life for those seeds," Magnet had said, "and all I got was one lousy handful." Stanley had also tried to explain that he needed to save his energy so he could teach Zero how to read, but the other boys just mocked him. "Same old story, ain't it, Armpit?" X-Ray had said. "The white boy sits around while the black boy does all the work. Ain't that right, Caveman?" "No, that's not right," Stanley replied. "No, it ain't," X-Ray agreed. "It ain't all right." Stanley dug out another shovelful of dirt, and he knew X-Ray would have been talking like that if he was the one teaching Zero to read. Then X-Ray would be talking about how important it was that he got his rest, right? So he could be a better teacher, right? And that was true. He did need to save his strength so that he could be a better teacher. Although Zero was a quick learner, sometimes, in fact, Stanley hoped the warden was watching them with her secret cameras and microphones, so she'd know that Zero wasn't stupid as everyone thought. From across the lake, he could see the approaching dust cloud, and he took a drink from his canteen, then waited to see who was driving the truck. The swelling, like the red and puffiness, on Mr. Sir's face had gone down, but it was still a little puffy. There had been 3 scratch marks down his cheek. 2 of the marks had faded, but the middle scratch must have been the deepest, because it still remained. It was a jagged purple line running from below his eye to below his mouth, like a tattoo of a scar. Stanley waited in line, and then handed from his canteen. Mr. Sir held it up to his ear and shook it. He smiled at the swishing sound. Stanley hoped he wouldn't dump it out. To his surprise, Mr. Sir held the canteen under the stream of water and filled it. "Wait here," he said. Still holding Stanley's canteen, Mr. Sir walked past him, then ran round to the side of the truck into the cab where he couldn't be seen. "What was he doing in there?" Zero asked. "I wish I knew," said Stanley. A short little while, Mr. Sir came out of the truck and handed Stanley his canteen. Sorry, I lost my spot. There we go. It was still full. "Thank you, Mr. Sir." Mr. Sir smiled at him. "What are you waiting for?" he asked. "Drink up." He popped some sunflower seeds into his mouth, chewed, and spit out the shells. Stanley was afraid to drink it. He hated to think what kind of vile substance Mr. Sir might have put in it. He brought the canteen back to his hole, and for a long time he left it beside his hole as he continued to dig. Then, when he was so thirsty that he could hardly stand it anymore, he unscrewed the cap, turned the canteen over, and poured it all out into the dirt. He was afraid that if he'd waited another second, he might have taken a drink. After Stanley taught Zero the final 6 letters of the alphabet, he taught him to write his name. Capital Z-E-R-O. Zero wrote the letters as Stanley said them. Zero, he said, looking at his piece of paper. His smile was too big for his face. Stanley watched him write it over and over again. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. In a way, it had made him sad. He couldn't help but think that 100 times 0 was still nothing. You know that's not my real name, Zero had said, as they headed to the rec room for dinner. Well, yeah, Stanley said. I guess I knew that. He had never really been sure. Everyone always calls me Zero, even before I came here. Oh, okay. My real name is Hector. Hector, Stanley repeated. Hector Zeroni. Hopefully in your mind, Zeroni pops back up. If it doesn't, flip back, see where we've met another Zeroni. All right, so we're going back to Kissin' Kate Barlow's story back in 100 years ago. After 20 years, Kate Barlow returned to Green Lake. It was a place where nobody would ever find her. A ghost town on a ghost lake. The peach trees had all died, but there were a couple of small oak trees still growing by an abandoned cabin. The cabin used to be on the eastern shore of the lake. Now the edge of the lake was over 5 miles away, and it was little more than a small pond full of dirty water. She lived in the cabin, and sometimes she could hear Sam's voice echoing across the emptiness. Onions, sweet fresh onions. She knew she was crazy. She knew she'd been crazy for the last 20 years. Oh, Sam, she would say, speaking into the vast emptiness. I know it's hot, but I feel so very cold. My hands are cold, my feet are cold, my face is cold, my heart is cold. And sometimes she would hear him say, I can fix that. And she'd feel his warm arm across her shoulders. She'd been living in the cabin about 3 months when she awakened one morning to someone kicking open the door. She opened her eyes to see the blurry end of a rifle, a gun, 2 inches from her nose. She could smell Trout Walker's dirty feet. You've got exactly 10 seconds to tell me where you've hidden your loot, right, your treasure, said Trout, or else I'll blow your head off. She yawned. A red-headed woman was there with Trout. Kate could see her rummaging through the cabin, dumping drawers and knocking things over from the shelves and cabinets. The woman came to her. Where is it? She demanded. Linda Miller? Asked Kate. Is that you? Linda Miller had been in the 4th grade when Kate Barlow was still a teacher. She had been a cute, freckle-faced girl with beautiful red hair. Now her face was all blotchy, and her hair was dirty and scraggly. It's Linda Walker now, said Trout. Oh, Linda, I'm so sorry, said Kate. Trout jabbed at her throat with the rifle. Where's the loot? There is no loot, said Kate. Don't give me that, shouted Trout. You've robbed every bank from here to Houston. You better tell him, said Linda. We're desperate. You married him for his money, didn't you? Asked Kate. Linda nodded. But it's all gone. It dried up with the lake. The peach trees, the livestock. I kept thinking it has to rain soon. The drought can't last forever, but it just keeps getting hotter and hotter and hotter. Her eyes fixed on the shovel, which was leaning against the fireplace. She's buried it, she declared. I don't know what you're talking about, said Kate. There was a loud blast as Trout fired his rifle just above her head. The window behind her shattered. Where's it buried? He demanded. Go ahead and kill me, Trout, said Kate, but I sure hope you like to dig, 'cause you're going to be digging for a long time. It's a big, vast wasteland out there. You and your children and their children can dig for the next 100 years and you'll never find it. Linda grabbed Kate's hair and jerked her head back. Oh, we're not going to kill you, she said, but by the time we're finished with you, you're going to wish you were dead. I've been wishing I was dead for the last 20 years, said Kate. They dragged her out of bed and pushed her outside. She wore blue silk pajamas, her turquoise-studded black boots remaining beside her bed. They loosely tied her legs together so she could walk but couldn't run. They made her walk barefoot on the hot ground. They wouldn't let her stop walking. "Not until you take us to the loot," said Trout. Linda hit Kate on the back of her legs with the shovel. "You're going to take it to us sooner or later. You might as well make it sooner." She walked one way, then the other, until her feet were black and blistered. Whenever she stopped, Linda whacked her with the shovel. "I'm losing my patience," warned Trout. Then she felt the shovel jab into her back, and she fell hard onto the dirt. "Get up," ordered Linda. Kate struggled to her feet. "We're being easy on you today," said Trout. "It's just going to keep getting worse and worse until you take us to it." "Look out!" shouted Linda. A lizard leaped toward them, and Kate could see its big red eyes. Linda tried to hit it with the shovel, and Trout shot it, but they both missed. The lizard landed on Kate's bare ankle. Its sharp black teeth bit into her leg, and its white tongue lapped up over the droplets of blood that leaked out of the wound. Kate smiled, and there was nothing she could do to her anymore. "Start digging," she said. "Where is it?" Linda screeched. "Where'd you bury it?" Trout demanded. And Kate Barlow died laughing. So that's the end of part 1. So that chapter has a lot of stuff I want you to go back and think about. Okay, 1, we just learned that Zero's name is Hector Zeroni. Go back into your book, find out where we know another Zeroni from. Think about that. Then, Kate Barlow dies, and her treasure is somewhere, right? They think that her treasure is buried somewhere, and it's in this place in Green Lake. And so now they're going to start digging. Right? Like the boys are digging. Okay, last thing. Linda has red hair. Who else has bright red hair? Okay, go back and think about it. If you can't remember, maybe comment on the teams and we'll help each other out. Okay, so we're going to stop there. In our next one, I'll hop in on part 2. Part 2 is called The Last Hole. Dun, dun, dun. All right, guys, have a great day. Bye.